You're like us. You're probably tired of flipping through outdated and expensive regulation books and struggling to understand the rule or guidance you're after. eRigs is the first web and mobile app version of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, helping fleets of all types and sizes better access and understand their regulatory obligations. eRigs is always up to date and allows fleet safety professionals to not only read the rules, but also dig into FMCSA guidance and learn more about complex regulatory topics from industry experts. Highlight, bookmark, and take detailed notes right from the app and access them on any of your devices. And easily share a digital version of the regulations with your drivers so that they too can better understand the rules. eRigs was developed by safety professionals for safety professionals. Try it out for free at erigs.app. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 50 of Trucksafe Live, the show where we and our guests tackle the hot button issues impacting highway transportation. I'm Brandon, it's Tyler, that's Jared. We're with Trucksafe and Childress Law, both of which are dedicated to helping motor carriers develop and maintain cutting-edge safety programs. Show 50, guys. Can you believe we've done 50 of these?
Wow, that's impressive. Just don't watch the first ones.
I don't know that anybody watches any of them, to be honest with you.
I've done 2. You've done 50.
I've done 50. Jared's done several, more than 2.
I've maybe done a dozen tops. So thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, well, if anybody is actually here watching us, say hey in the comments so we can see who's here with us. And yeah, we've got another great show in store. It's a topic that has been in the news pretty heavily recently, and even going back the last couple of years or so. It's all about cargo theft and cyber threats, significant issues impacting a lot of the fleets that we work with, and seems to be becoming a bigger issue every day almost. And so wanted to break that down, figure out, some of the traps, where some of the traps are, and what fleets can do to best protect themselves. So excited to have a special guest with us today to break that down for us, because we are not the experts on those topics, far from it. But interested to see some best practices, stuff like that, to keep yourselves safe from that type of stuff. So anyway, that's what's coming up. I wanted to first thank our sponsor of this show, of this episode, which is Project 61, which aims to improve the life expectancy of CDL drivers by raising awareness, providing resources, and educating drivers on a healthier lifestyle. Learn how you can support the movement over at project-61.org. Thanks to those folks. All right, some things going on at Trucksafe. Before we get started here, first up, I'm going to keep mentioning this until it actually happens, and that is our upcoming Fleet Compliance Boot Camp. This is our 2-day in-person conference that we put on once a year. Our next one is scheduled for September 3rd and 4th in Indianapolis, presented by DriveWise. Thanks to DriveWise for helping us out with this one. We hope to see you there. Trucksafebootcamp.com is where you can find the details and register yourself. This is a great opportunity for fleet safety professionals, safety managers, safety directors, owners of small trucking companies, risk advisors, those types of folks to gather together, network with one another, and then also spend a full 2 days of talking nothing but DOT safety and compliance. So looking forward to a good crowd. We usually have around 100 or so in attendance, and we've got a lot of cool things in store for this year. So looking forward to that. I know Tyler and Jared will be there. The whole Trucksafe team will be there, except Brian. Brian just told me that he's out. So he's got something else going. That's all right.
Come on.
That's all right. We'll make Tyler cover his stuff. But anyway, Hope to see you there. Trucksafebootcamp.com. Next up, I'll mention the Trucksafe Network. If you're not a member of this, I'd encourage you to join it. It's free to join. Trucksafenetwork.com, or scan that QR code on the screen and download the app in the App Store or the Google Play Store. This is the space we've built for safety professionals to gather together, learn from one another, ask questions, and also access all of our DOT-related content that we push out through Trucksafe, including all of our videos, podcasts, webinars. We just did a well-attended webinar on DOT audits, what they entail, kind of the methodology, how they work, stuff like that. So you can get all of that for free, trucksafenetwork.com. Hope to see you over there. And then lastly, I'll just mention our newsletter. If you need a resource for breaking industry news or changing rules or anything like that, then check out our newsletter, trucksafe.com/subscribe, and get it delivered right to your mailbox. And you don't have to worry about finding it. So anyway, enough about us. A couple things going on in the industry that I think we should talk about because they're coming up next week, in fact, for both of these things. First is changes to the CDL medical certification process, the process through which CDL drivers get their physical examination results tied to their driving records. This is a pretty big deal. It's changing. The process through which that gets done is changing as of Monday, June 23rd. I did a whole hour-and-a-half webinar on this recently with Infinity, and that's on our website. If anybody's interested in the details on this, you can check out our website, trucksafe.com. We have an article on it, and then it also includes the replay of that webinar I just did where I broke it down. But essentially, CDL drivers specifically, are no longer going to be issued physical med cards anymore. They're not going to carry those cards around with them. They're not going to give them to the motor carriers as proof of their physical qualifications. It's going to be an electronic process. So CDL driver goes and gets a new medical exam. Medical examiner uploads that to the National Registry of Medical Examiners, and then the National Registry transmits it directly to their state licensing agency, taking out the middleman where the driver used to have to take that physically to their DMV. So I think it'll eventually be a good change. But I worry, as with any new technological changes that the FMCSA tries to implement, that there's going to be a period of time where folks are going to be on the struggle bus in terms of getting that thing to work smoothly. So if you've got drivers who have a med card expiring Monday or sometime around then, watch out. That would be my recommendation to you. Be on top of it. Guys,
Yeah, and during the struggle bus period, it may be a good idea to continue having that electronic copy of the med card.
Yeah, so the guidance says that if the driver asks the medical examiner for a physical copy of their med card, that the medical examiner should give it to them, but they're not required to give it to them anymore. So I think it is a good idea to go ahead and have your drivers go ahead and request one, even though as of Monday, that is no longer going to be official proof that they actually are physically qualified. The only physical proof of their qualifications is going to be their driving record, their MVRs that you're supposed to be running. So anyway.
And then Brandon, let me ask you this: for the purposes of driver qualification file, what are you keeping in there?
Yeah, not the. It won't be the med card for CDL drivers anymore. For non-CDL drivers, regulated drivers, you're still going to have a physical med card, so you're going to have to keep it for them. But for CDL drivers, the only physical proof of their qualifications is going to be the MVR. So anytime your CDL drivers get a new med card, you are supposed to be running a new MVR showing that they have that medical qualification. So if you're not already doing that, you should have been doing that over the last 10 years anyway. But even to this day, we still find carriers that aren't doing those 15-day MVRs. And so now your hand is forced. You're going to have to be doing those because that's your only proof that they are medically certified. Even if you have a copy of their physical med card in the file, that's not going to be sufficient. So watch out for that. Big issue. The last thing I'll mention before we move to today's topic is another thing coming up next week, June 25th, enhanced enforcement of the English language proficiency requirement. We did a whole show on this a couple episodes back. Go back and watch that if you didn't see it. We had a roundtable discussion on the new English language proficiency requirements. Not so much new requirements, but enhanced enforcement of the existing requirement. In other words, effective June 25th, drivers who aren't able to proficiently speak with law enforcement during roadside inspections in English or read road signs are going to be placed out of service. And there's a lot of questions that we still have about how this is going to play out in real time. Like, for example, one of your drivers gets placed out of service for an ELP violation. How do you get them back in service? What is sufficient evidence that they can now speak English proficiently that you can place them back in service? That's the big question that a lot of folks have, and I don't know that we have great answers to it. We're going to have to wait and see how it plays out. But yeah, I mean, that we're in a wait and see mode at this point, but that could be big problems for a lot of fleets coming up next week because a lot of their freight is going to be grounded if that happens.
Yeah, I gotta think that there's got to be some kind of guidance forthcoming related to that question. Other out of service violations, there's clear fixes that you can get the driver right back out on the road. But here, I mean, there's no quick fix with teaching someone how to speak English sufficiently if they don't already do it. And so hopefully we get some guidance from the agency on that front.
I'm not going to embarrass our competitors by calling them out, but I saw some competitors put out some English language training materials, and they represented it as like a 30-minute video. It's like you're not teaching somebody to proficiently speak English in 30 minutes. So, yeah.
Memorize the signs and the questions.
Yeah. With that said, we do offer some resources. It's nothing like that. But if anybody's interested, we have these available. We've got essentially 3 resources that we're working on. One is something that I think all fleets should be doing anyway, which is an English language proficiency assessment. As part of your onboarding process, when you are qualifying new drivers, fleets should have some kind of a test where they can test this at the start before they even put the drivers in the truck. So we offer an in-depth assessment pack that you can download and you can use. It kind of models the FMCSA's enforcement policy where it's 2 parts. It includes an interview with the driver, asking them questions and having them respond in English, and then also a sign recognition test where we have a series of road signs and you have the drivers explain what those road signs are. And then if they pass the test, then you've got some good evidence in their DQ file that they passed the English language proficiency assessment. So I think that's a good tool to have in your tool belt. And then also something we're getting ready to launch is a monthly ELP enforcement survey, something that I've wished existed but doesn't seem to exist in any form that I've been able to find, is good historical data on how English language proficiency has been enforced over the last years. I mean, you could find the data in FMCSA's A&I system, but you have to dig for it and you have to like pull it out, and it's pretty painful. So what we are doing as a service for our clients, if anybody's interested in, we have put that in a more user-friendly format, and we're going to update it every month as FMCSA's ELP data comes in so that you can see how this is playing out across the U.S. We're going to have like a heat map that shows which states are being particularly aggressive with ELP enforcement, so you know, hey, we need to be particularly careful in these particular states. We're going to have some analysis. We're going to throw in some analysis in those reports of what we're seeing trends-wise from an ELP enforcement, and we're going to give the full historical data that's available that shows how enforcement's playing out over time. So that will be a monthly survey that we're going to offer here soon. First report should be out in the next week or so. It will be historical data, obviously, since that enhanced enforcement doesn't start until next week. But that's something, if you're interested in, check out trucksafe.com/ELP is where you'll find all of our ELP resources. And then the last thing we're working on, the last resource, is an eventual partnership. We're just working out the details here. A partnership with Babbel. If anybody's ever used Babbel, it's a pretty well-known language training software solution that has been around for a long time. It can teach you all kinds of different languages. Like if you're a native English speaker and you want to learn Spanish, that's a great tool to do it. But they also have English training for non-native English speaking individuals. And so we're working on a partnership with them where our clients should be able to get preferred pricing through them if they need some training for drivers that struggle with English proficiency. I think that's the best way to tackle it, frankly, is a company like that has a lot of experience training drivers, no matter what their native language is, teaching them English and doing so in a way that is methodical and really trains them up correctly. And that, once they pass that, then I think that is good evidence to have in your back pocket to then put them back in service. It's not that, hey, they just took a 10-minute course. We actually put them through a detailed training program, and here's evidence that they passed it. So for what it's worth.
Yeah, take the course, however long you define that course to be, do another assessment, and then get the driver back on the road.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's all I've got for industry news. You guys have anything else going on before we move on to today's topic?
Nope, those are the big ones.
Tyler?
Nothing for me.
All right. Well, as I said at the start, today's episode is all about cargo theft and cyber threats. These are escalating threats, which are hitting the U.S. fleets and others in the supply chain harder than ever. In 2024, Verus CargoNet reported nearly 3,800 cargo theft incidents, a 26% surge from the previous year, with losses reaching $455 million, though some experts estimate the true cost could be approaching $1 billion annually due to unreported cases. These are growing risks combined with increasingly sophisticated cyber attacks like ransomware demand attention immediately. So joining us today to discuss these important issues is Justin Austin, Senior VP at Aon Insurance and head of its transportation and logistics practice group in the Greater Cincinnati area. Welcome, Justin.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. I feel honored. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yep.
I gotcha.
Perfect. I feel honored to be on episode 50 for you guys, Big 50.
Big 50.
Hopefully got some folks tuning in here. So wanted to start just, a little background on myself. I think would be kind of a good place to start here. So I grew up in the trucking industry. My dad's been an owner-operator now for 36 years. He was a fleet driver, company driver for a little bit, but currently an owner-operator. So I've been in 45 states in the semi-truck. I remember 2 logbooks, one you give to the DOT and one to the dispatcher get paid. Obviously, you cannot do that anymore, but I actually remember helping him trace the logbooks as a child. So how times have changed. So in middle school, he decided to start his own small fleet. We got up to like 12, 14 trucks, nothing crazy, but I was booking C.H. Robinson, cheap and heavy loads and TQL loads from the home office while him and the driver's route, I was helping dispatch. Went to school, entire life. My dad told me not to be a truck driver, right? I think most kids of a trucking family hear that same message. Graduated college, had no clue what I actually wanted to do, and TQL, Total Quality Logistics, came calling. So I spent the first 7 years of my career there. 5 years, I was a broker. I was one of the top sales guys they had. A couple of the large retail clients kind of fell underneath me, 300-400 shipments per week. Went back. I like to say I made the mistake. I went back and got my MBA degree. So I gave up a pretty large book of business to move into leadership. Had a sales team out in Erlanger, Kentucky, next to the airport, next to CBG. And then they approached me about creating the Mexico department. So I was the head of Mexico. I created that department. I grew that to a pretty sizable operation before I left at the end of 2020. When you were talking about the English language kind of enforcement we have going on, I remember that being such a struggle, and I still have some clients down in the Laredo area, which is our #1 port city. But I think 16%, if I recall correctly, of all violations came from the state of Texas. And in the last 2 years, there's been over 1,000 violations for just that one, the English piece. So it's really going to hit those border town carriers pretty hard. I know they're giving them a little bit more leeway initially, but we'll see how that really affects it.
Yeah, the
so
caveat,
anyways,
to that point, worth saying that the carriers and drivers operating in the commercial zones on the border are exempted somewhat from that rule in the sense that their drivers will still be written up for the violations if they can't speak proficiently, but they will not be placed out of service. So that is how it'll be for the time being. But like you said, we'll have to wait and see how it plays out.
Brandon, do you know the answer if they're the B1 drivers and they're driving outside the commercial vehicles or the trade zone? Are they going to get violated if they're outside that zone, but they're operating within, like the company's operating within?
Yeah, so if they're outside the zone, well, yeah, so the B1 visa is kind of a separate issue from the commercial zone issue. In other words, just being a B1 visa holder doesn't necessarily restrict you to the commercial zones. But putting that issue aside, if it's a B1 driver who's operating outside the commercial zones, it's being within the commercial zones that gets you out of the out of service violation. So if you're outside the commercial zone, then my understanding is you're going to be placed out of service. So even if the company has primary operation, it's primarily operating in the commercial zone. That's how I think it's supposed to work.
Yeah, no, thanks for the education. Obviously not the expert there. But anyway, so left TQL and got recruited away to try this insurance thing. I like to say I didn't know retail brokers, insurance agents really was a thing. I went direct to carriers for my home and auto. So USI recruited me away. They wanted someone to kind of run their transportation logistics practice locally. It was a great fit. Was able to kind of use my network and my expertise from being in a trucking family to really thrive in that environment. Spent 3.5 years there, and then made the move over to Aon about a year ago. This Tuesday was my 1-year anniversary with Aon. So kind of spearhead really all of the Midwest. I know I said Greater Cincinnati, but I focus really from Chicago down to really about Nashville area, St. Louis over to Pittsburgh. So pretty big territory.
Perfect. Well, you've seen this from several different angles, and so yeah, curious how you got into, because Tyler and I recently spoke at a Indiana Motor Truck Association event in Indiana, and you were there speaking with a colleague of yours on cargo theft and cyber attacks, and curious how number one, how you got into that kind of area of issues for fleets.
Yeah, let's start, I guess, two areas here. So I started speaking at different conferences when I was at USI Insurance, started really at the TIA speaking on brokerage issues, contingent auto, contingent cargo. And from there, cargo theft just kept coming up one after another. And then I spoke at ATA fall of 24, or summer of 24, to all the state trucking association presidents. And I brought in Scott Cornell from Travelers. I brought in another person internally within Aon, a cyber expert, and great discussion, just great panels. Since then, it's been kind of mind-blowing. All of the state trucking association presidents have been reaching out to me like, hey, like, you guys did this to us. Like, we need it in Arkansas, we need it in Illinois, we need it in Ohio. And honestly, I've turned down more than I would love to say. A lot of the time it's like, hey, last minute kind of situations, but that's kind of evolved. So now we have the cyber piece that's really kind of custom, it's became a part of it, right? It's not just cargo theft anymore. It's not just straight theft, which is what we're used to with the traditional methods, but cyber is a piece of it.
Yeah. So I saw a couple of stories. This kind of leads into what we're about to talk about. These came across my news feed here this past week. Just to highlight the issue here, this was a news story. Where was this out of? Colorado. Yeah. So $1.4 million worth of Nintendo Switch 2 consoles in high demand. Stolen in there it is, Colorado. Duh. Let's see. High dollar heist was discovered earlier this month involving theft of thousands of Nintendo Switch 2 gaming consoles worth about $500 each at a Love's truck stop in Bennett, according to Arab County Sheriff's Office. Semi-truck driver reported that during a pre-trip inspection, he discovered that his trailer had been broken into and newly released Nintendo Switch 2 consoles were missing. So obviously not a good day for him. And then this is the big one that has been in our news feeds probably collectively here over the last couple weeks. Whole Foods distributor UNFI, the story here remains hobbled following possible cyber attack. UNFI is continuing to address IT network issues. It had suspended its systems as of Monday after the wholesale distributor of natural and organic food products identified unauthorized activity into its IT systems. And that's had several downstream effects from what I can tell. So, and that's just within the last couple of weeks. I've seen both of these things, and this seems to be a growing trend. So I guess our first question to you is, how would you describe the current state of cargo theft and cyber threats for U.S. fleets in 2025?
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get into the current state, I would like to kind of highlight Aon and kind of how we're
Sure, go for it.
uniquely positioned to talk on the subject. So Aon's transportation practice, I know the audience here is mostly for hire fleets. So we currently ride or handle 37% of the top 100 motor carriers across the country. That's over 1.5 billion in premium. That's 9 billion in annual miles driven by those companies. Those include Swift and US Express and Martin and Estes and AAA Cooper, like all the big ones, all the way down to, the smaller mid-size fleets, 100 plus units. But we don't just do transportation. We insure a large number of the top 25 freight brokers, including some of the largest ones. So we see it from the trucking side, we see it from the brokerage side. But Aon also insures 70% of the top 1,000 retailers across the country / across the globe. So we see it from all. So it hasn't hit the news yet. It probably will hit the news in the next couple of days. There was a $3 million theft that was discovered in the past 2 days that I caught wind of this morning. A large retailer I was with a couple of weeks ago that we insure, and they had about $9 million worth of products stolen amongst 6
Yikes.
loads over the past 5 months. And it's everything now, right? It's the Nintendo Switches, or it's electronics. This particular one was a situation where they were removing perfume, high-end perfume, ones that we cannot afford, from boxes and resealing them up, and they did it over the course of 30 loads. That equaled $1.4 million of perfume stolen.
Wow.
That's how high in the perfume was. So anyways, so we are able to see it, not just cargo theft, but the cyber exposure throughout the entire supply chain.
Hey, Justin,
So,
I've got
yep.
a question. So, in talking about the state of cargo theft, I mean, it's in the news. It's kind of hit a fever pitch. It's in Congress. One thing I think, the 2 articles that Brandon highlighted here is, what has been the development between kind of the straight theft and the cyber attacks towards the theft? And can you kind of give a definition of each? I mean, I think they're fairly apparent, but kind of how it's changed and how you've seen it change in those kind of categories of the type of theft.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So grandpa's theft, whatever you want to call it, the old way of theft is straight theft. That's the traditional. You're gonna get basically hijacked at a parking lot, or stolen or broken in the trailer at a truck stop. It's a warehouse. Outside of the U.S., it's still pretty common, especially down in Brazil, where you are physically hijacked and Fast and Furious, but they hold you at gunpoint. Like, those are still common, mostly in other parts of the world. What we're seeing is not really cyber. We call it strategic theft, but there's a cyber component to it. This is deception. It's basically doing wash BOLs, where they're going in and they're actually changing the delivery instructions or parts of the bill of ladings. Then, it's falsifying documents. It is the cyber piece. So they're going in and they are going into FMCSA and switching emails or phone numbers or hijacking those. It's the business email compromise, where they're getting into those emails and switching or email and taking freight on the behalf of a real carrier and stealing the identity. It's anything from that to fake credentials. It's the GPS spoofing. It's all that, right? And that's kind of the leading way. And Brandon, you did a great job kind of mentioning what the losses have been and what we're forecasting. No one actually knows what the real loss of cargo theft is, right? They're just putting the value of the cargo and adding that together. They're not taking into consideration what it costs to actually remanufacture that, all the way down the supply chain and inventory and the cost to reship that and what that really has on the supply chain. We estimate that total could easily pass $35 billion across the worldwide. by the end of this year.
Wow.
So it's a real threat, not just to trucking companies, to brokerage, not to shippers, but across the entire supply chain. And with that being said, it's estimated only 10% of cargo theft is reported. Because you have to self-report to CargoNet, or if you don't file a police report, which happens. So it's just a tenth of that. Yeah, the total loss is not what's estimated out there today.
Justin,
yep.
Have you seen TMS being susceptible to cyber attacks?
We've seen fraudulent brokers going into different TMSs and bidding on freight and taking freight, and that's becoming more and more as we continue to see these kind of AI brokers, automated brokers, where there's less of a phone conversation going on, even though you can deep fake now and actually do phone calls. But as we push towards more automated services, it's easier not to catch that down this chain because you're not actually talking to someone.
Yeah. So yeah, I asked because I mean, looking at that Nintendo Switch case in Colorado where all the $1.4 million of Switches were stolen, I mean, a carrier that has what looks like a straight theft situation, maybe they should be asking questions about cyber, meaning, this truck is in this location at this time and what it's moving. Do you encourage deeper questioning even with straight theft related to cyber?
Yeah, so I made some notes in that piece. Give me 1 second here, just because I didn't want to speak out of turn. So on the, 1 second. Yeah, so you need obviously GPS tracking on all your equipment. I still like to, unfortunately, not to place the blame on someone else. It's really not, there's a piece of this on the trucking companies. There is a piece. And there's a piece on the brokerages. The shippers and warehouses have to do a better job. They're not checking driver's license. They're not checking the documents are correctly when they go in there. They're not have enough video footage to actually catch the entire tractor and trailer, to catch the MC on the side of the truck and the trailer number. They're not doing a good enough period of data retention, for example. One of the largest retailers that most of us in the cargo world have issues with, they only keep their video footage for 30 days. And they're the number one attack shipper right now in cargo theft.
Well, and let me ask this, what incentive do they have to do any of these things, right? Don't they just push it down? Don't they just say, hey, broker, or hey, especially the carrier, right? Even if the carrier was hacked, hey, this is on you. I mean, is there going to be any way for them? I mean, I hear that they've got losses, but it sounds like either the insurance is covering the loss or, either the carrier or the broker is just having to eat it. I mean, what is there a way to incentivize shippers to do that?
I think it comes really from the supply chain risk folks at those shippers up the chain to make them understand, because they are eating it, right? Whether it's remanufacturing, reshipping, repacking. But typically, especially on high value cargoes, these motor carriers don't have enough motor truck cargo coverage to actually insure the full load value, right? So if you're putting a $250,000 load on a motor carrier that only has 100K, there's 150K. If that,
I'll say you've done something wrong. You've done something very wrong.
So it's more common than you think, because there's there's not enough capacity out there with enough coverage for these shippers, which is another issue altogether. But say there's a 250K load stolen, 100K in cargo, and let's hope the 100K in cargo coverage actually covers their portion. You have a 150K gap. Someone's going to pay for that. They're going to try to pass it down on a broker if the broker is liable, but more than likely it's going to go into their stock throughput insurance policy. So they're going to pay for it on the back end.
What's a typical deductible on a shipper like in inland marine policy? I mean, so if they're eating it, I mean, are they fairly low deductibles that they're not worrying about it that much? I mean, you would figure that, if they had bad losses, that their premiums would get jacked up pretty good. I mean, that's usually when people start caring, right? Starts hitting the bottom line.
And those rates have went up. Well, I'll take that back. Stock throughput rates are actually down right now because there's additional capacity on the reinsurance side in that realm. So why motor truck cargo is going up and up and up due to cargo theft. A lot of the other marine products, including stock throughput, has decreased along with property insurance. So it's a weird time where property rates are down 10% roughly across the board, and stock throughput rates are down 10 to 15% across the board. So there's a lot on the back end that kind of goes into that. But to answer your question, large shippers easily can have a $500,000, $1 million stock throughput deductible. The most common ones we see are probably closer to 100K though.
Hey, Justin, I was wondering if you could walk through, because I know you've hit on different pieces of it, and like when you mentioned the importance of receivers checking the driver's license and the placarding on the side of the truck and stuff like that. But I just kind of wonder if you could walk through how that plays out from the start to the end, because I don't think enough carriers realize, they're focused on that straight theft that you mentioned. They fail to realize these more advanced tactics that the criminals have latched onto. So if you could just walk us through how you've seen that play out in the real world, that would be helpful, I think.
Yeah, so it varies so drastically between different shippers on what they require that the typical process would be, a broker would assign the load to a motor carrier. The motor carrier goes and checks in the shipper, but in between that process, the broker is going to supply the information to the shipper on that pickup. Now, there's obviously ELD or not ELDs, just the electronic transmission of the data back and forth now, where it's not just a phone call, it's not just an email. But they check in, they give their driver's license, they get all the paperwork. What they should be doing is actually scanning the driver's license, right? If they just look at the driver's license, cool, they see the name, that's not enough. They should be scanning it, recording it. They should be going out. And I remember when I was at TQL, like it was a requirement for certain high value loads. We requested the motor carrier to take a picture of the truck, the side of the truck on site. But we also asked the shipping manager or a shipping clerk to take a picture as well to match it. If we could get that to happen, and a lot of the time these shipping managers or clerks like, we're too busy, we're not going to do it, we're not going to do it. If we could get that to happen on every shipment, that cuts down cargo theft by a large percentage.
Because the concern is that the nefarious actors somehow get access to the fact that load is ready for pickup, and then they show up with their own driver and truck, and if nobody's checking that stuff, then they just leave with that cargo as if it was their own.
Yep, that's one, definitely one of the methods. There's other methods where they change the delivery address, right? So a real carrier thinks they're supposed to deliver in Redlands, California, and they take it to, Orange, wherever in California, Southern California, to a warehouse. They think they're making an actual delivery, and that's a spoof warehouse. And then before you know it, that load is, Long Beach, leaving the country already.
Is that what happens to most of the freight? Does most of it just get to a port and it's sayonara?
Gone. Yeah, most of it. I forget the percentage off the top of my head, but it's the majority of shipment stolen are overseas. We had a case here in Louisville, Kentucky, between Indy actually, down to Louisville, where cell phone chips were stolen. And there was like 4 or 5 loads before. It was a combination of the Kentucky State Police, and they have a cargo task force, and I think Indiana State. When they finally caught on that they were being stolen, they were able to get Verizon or whoever, I forget, Sony maybe, to activate the chips to see where the location is. And they were in 30 countries already. And this was like within 48 hours of the loads being stolen.
That's crazy.
72 hours. So yeah, they just go, and the first opportunity they can, they're shipping it overseas, and it's lost. So it's, what was I saying? Yeah. So sorry, spaced out there. If the shipment is reported, stolen, lost, within 24 hours, there's an 80% chance that it's going to get recovered. If it's not reported within 24 hours, those numbers go down significantly.
Now, who should it be reported to? I mean, I know the FBI's got a very small task force, and typically, in my experience, the local authorities, what are they going to do? The freight's gone. So, from where you guys sit, let's say I'm a fleet, or really anybody else, who should they be reporting it to? I mean, clearly their cargo insurer if they're involved in some way, but who's going to get it back?
Yeah, so rely on your insurance carrier for sure. Not just saying that because I'm in insurance, but if you have someone like a Travelers or an Allianz or a U.S. Marine, they're going to have a ton of resources. I do think it's important that everyone has a service contract just out there with a private investigating firm for cargo. There's a ton out there now, and they keep popping up. There's an approved vendor list on TAPA, which is the Transportation Asset Protection Association, which is the leading association when it comes to cargo theft, cargo security. The TAPA standards are next level, and they're creating one right now for freight brokers that is going to be released, I think, next week on what freight brokers have to do. And a lot of these large shippers, retailers are going to require freight brokers to be TAPA certified, which I think is going to help a lot. It's going to, probably eliminate some of those smaller hole in the wall brokerages from taking some of those. But I don't know if that's a bad thing right now in the state of cargo theft. So check out TAPA. There's a vendor list on there.
Of actual inspectors that are dedicated to finding stolen cargo.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
For example, MIS is one that we have relied heavily on. A lot of the insurance carriers do. I think they have a 92.
What are the costs for that? Like, I mean, if somebody was, I mean, just ballpark it, just so people are kind of aware. Well, hey, if this is something, maybe it depends on the freight I'm hauling. But,
Tyler's looking for a new job.
I don't get that. I don't get that invoice, and I haven't asked the question. I am doing a presentation with the president at MIS on July 26th in Florida. If you want to make a trip down to Tampa, more than welcome.
I'll be down there with you, Justin.
I think it's kind of hot down there this time of year.
Will you be down there?
Is that around the same time as the FTA annual conference? Is that same time?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
I'll be speaking at that,
so
I'll be down there.
Okay. Yeah, so Rolly is the president head of MIS, Marine Intelligence Security firm. He's one of those approved vendors I was talking about. But he has about his firm has about a 92% success rate if reported within 24 hours.
Tyler really just wants to know if you get to have a badge and carry a gun. That's what Tyler wants to know.
Yeah, well, these guys are ex-Marine, Green Beret, and FBI. Perfect. So, Tyler, you might fit right in.
I don't know if I'd qualify. Those guys are way more badass than I could ever hope to be. But there are resources.
To go back on that though, safety directors, risk directors, they need to become friends not just with the local law enforcement, but ask, like Kentucky, for example, has a really good. It's not that many people, but that group is really good. The Cargo Theft Task Force. Ask them for contacts in the hot areas, right? So you got California, you got Texas, you got Georgia. Those are really the hotbeds, right? Chicagoland. Every trucking company that's listening, they should have contacts for a California task force, Cargo Theft Task Force. You should be able to call them up and be like, hey, I think I have a load at this warehouse. Can you do a drive-by? And that's what the medium to large size fleets are doing. All these large fleets, they have on speed dial different people, different law enforcement at all the hot areas, Southern California, Texas, Chicago, Atlanta. We also are seeing more and more cities leverage, and I think it's called Flock. Don't correct me on that name if you guys know, but the license plate reader in Atlanta has gotten so advanced that, like, if you can report one, you have a license plate number. They're having a ton of success right now tracking down shipments that go through Atlanta. Wow. I know other cities are kind of working on that, environment, actual footprint on those cameras. So yeah, local law enforcement, reach out to different cargo task force throughout the country to have people on speed dial, basically. I did talk to the head of the cargo theft for the FBI when I was at TAPA. They are trying. I think they're going to get some more people on that.
This administration, they're getting some more money.
It's all the people leaving from FMCSA.
Yeah.
And
yes. Cuts from other areas, I guess.
Can I get a badge again?
Yeah, totally should. So I'll believe that when I actually see it, but he was somewhat optimistic during that conference. And like I said, I'm excited for the freight broker piece to have stricter standards, because it's so easy to become a freight broker. We all know this. The cost of entry is nothing, next to nothing.
$3,000.
Yeah. So having standards where they're not going to be able to accept an Amazon load or a Walmart or a Best Buy shipment unless they do X, Y, Z, and that includes cyber.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. We've talked a lot about theft. Now, what about cyber attacks? Where are you seeing that pick up steam for your insurance customers, and what recommendations do you have for them in that regard?
Yes. So I'll start with like the small fleets, because I don't think we do enough to kind of what they should do. A lot of Aon's clients are going to be in the large enterprise space, and they can afford some different platforms, and they have the resources, right, to do some of the other stuff that everyone should be doing. But for small fleets, they should be using low-cost tools, right? They should be using the FMCSA portal. They should be using open source business records. They should be vetting anyone they're taking a load from, right? They should be going to the open source business. I have a list. Hang on one second.
So you're saying small fleets, flip the script, should vet their customers, especially
yes,
brokers, right?
Yeah, brokers especially, right? Yeah. So, stuff that Google, there's Broker Snapshot, there's roserocket.com. Even if you go like the Better Business Bureau, and just make sure they're a legit business. That's probably the number one step I would say. From a cyber piece, the MFA. Like if you don't have MFA on
multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, multi-factor on all software, all platforms, you're almost asking for it. Right? You're asking for something to go wrong. Consider third-party services for any sort of credential checks, driver license, ID, verification. But really, across everyone, small, large, enterprise, train your staff. Like if there's nothing else you take away from today, train your staff better. One example of train your staff. So we kind of all know Highways, one of the top platforms out there for carrier vetting. This brokerage had all Highways, they had Carrier 411, they had a couple of different platforms. They had all the processes in place. They had a broker. It was Valentine's Day. It was about 3:30, 4 o'clock. He ignored 6 red flags in the system and overrided the system and booked the carrier. $50,000 worth of cargo gone Valentine's evening so he can get to his date.
Hopefully it was a good one.
Yeah.
Hopefully. And now he can't afford it, but that's beside the point. So train your staff and make sure they understand what can happen, and beyond just, hey, you could lose your job, like how this fits into our company, and like you're a valuable member of the company and our success because of this, rather than, hey, if you don't follow the protocol, you're fired. Like, okay, I think we're kind of past that. If an employee doesn't feel valued at a company and how they contribute to the larger picture, they're not going to stay regardless. So like just how you train your employees. So that's on the smaller fleets, right? So
hey, Justin, real quick, a clarification on training. Beyond procedures, I mean, are you guys pushing out, is Aon specifically pushing out, like, phishing, training on phishing attacks and that kind of stuff? Because that's how, the cyber criminals are getting access, right? I mean, do you guys have stuff like that? Or, is that something that would be part of it, even for a small fleet? Hey, we've got 5 dispatchers, but maybe we need to do some of that cyber training.
Yes. So if you have cyber insurance coverage, like if you have the coverage, there are free trainings with the majority, if not all, of those carriers that you have placement with. So if you reach out to them, sometimes you have to reach out to your broker to reach out to the carrier to get access to that. Aon does have vendors that we align with, some of them that you get as a value add if you work with Aon. There's one in particular. Let me find the name of it.
While you're finding that, so this seems like there's a million different ways that these cyber attacks can happen. We just had one at Trucksafe that is probably worth mentioning, so other folks don't run into the same issue. We had some of our customers occasionally ask us for our bank details so that they can submit ACH payments to us when we do work for them. And a lot of times they will ask us for a voided check so that they can have the bank routing number and account number. So we had given that to usually our larger clients, not so much with the smaller clients, but one of the larger clients somehow got hit with a cyber attack or something, and our voided check got published on Google. You could literally Google a Trucksafe voided check and it would come up. And somebody got a hold of that and started writing all kinds of checks on our account, and we ended up paying out like $20,000 worth of fraudulent checks. Luckily, our bank got involved and got us all that money back and got the issue taken care of. But that happened just like that to us. So be on the lookout for that to anybody else.
And Brandon called me and asked me if I was writing checks.
I thought Jared was buying some new furniture or something, but
yeah, if you email justin.austin@aon.com, I'll send you some vendors from a training perspective and some more information on cyber. I don't think we have a ton of time to go through all of them. We also do have a free cyber assessment that we can do if you're interested, where we go through and we really see where the gaps are. It's more of a questionnaire unless you pay for like the next level up, where we actually go on site or we remote in, but that could be beneficial for any company looking to see where their weak points are within the organization.
I'll say something about that. For anybody, especially a fleet, if you're looking to sell your company at some point, from the M&A context and the due diligence that buyers are doing on your cyber policies and your cyber training and your data protection, that's pretty well standard in most transactions of any size. So if you've got resources that Justin has available, look at that, because it's not just we sit through this silly video. It can actually affect how potential buyers are evaluating your company.
Yeah, Tyler, that's a great point. We actually have a checklist. So amongst Aon's a big company, right? But one thing that we are really good at, we're the largest MMA advisor in the world. So we advise on the majority of the large MMA deals out there. And you're right, the cyber due diligence 5 years ago wasn't even a question. It wasn't part of the due diligence. And now you can't get through a due diligence report without answering the cyber questions and actually having a lot of those systems in place. I did want to mention we had a recent, obviously can't say clients or anything, but I can tell you kind of the gist of the story. Everyone's kind of heard the whole like deep fake come up, right? There's been the divorce that you can still, or the picture, you have an AI bot actually sitting in on Teams or Zoom or whatever. We had she was either the CFO or controller, one of the two. She had a podcast, ironic as we're on a podcast. She had a podcast where she did multiple podcasts.
Jared, are you
Someone
real?
had called her somewhere in the accounting to transfer funds. And they did it because it was her. It sounded just like her. and they were able to pull enough audio and use AI because she had public posted podcasts, not to scare you guys, and ended up transferring, I want to say it was like $47,000 as a result of that. And we've seen now CEOs, CFOs, actual videos pop up on Teams and some crazy stuff out there.
All right.
Yeah,
if anybody gets a call from me
unique,
asking for money,
it's a weird.
don't reply.
Aren't you supposed to have like a safe word? I mean, I don't know if that's what it's called. Like,
Yeah.
I think you're thinking of something
Yeah,
different, Tyler.
No, I'm sure it's a safe word.
He's actually thinking of pineapple. He's thinking of pineapple, but no, he's right. There is a safe word that should get implemented between anyone that has the ability to make payments or the C-level suite.
Yeah, so if somebody's, I guess, like if somebody's asking you for money, you'd be like, "Give me the safe word."
Yeah,
say it, Daddy.
Okay, we're going off the rails here.
Yeah, don't put the safe word on email.
No, but
yes,
honestly, even from a personal standpoint, I mean, I've heard other people talk about this with parents and or elderly people, that it's like, hey, can you send me some money, and making sure that they actually have a word or something that makes sure that, hey, this is the real person asking you, not somebody fake, not somebody trying to scam you.
Yeah. So, Justin, I was thinking about this before the podcast and thinking from the perspective of like a small carrier, medium-sized carrier, don't have the resources, don't have the IT team to do the cyber training, et cetera. What I heard from you is that you have this assessment that you can explore potential gaps and take action on those. Are there any other things aside from that you would give advice to small, medium carriers? Because it seems like an overwhelming concept to try to get cybersecurity under control if you've done nothing.
Yeah. The MFA, multi-factor authentication on everything would be a good starting point. There is online trainings, free trainings, but I would, if they are buying cyber insurance, rely on the cyber insurance carrier. If you're working with an insurance broker, anyone in the medium to large size brokerage space are going to have some free trainings or some trainings they can recommend that they can pass down. So rely on the free or discounted resources such as that. That's where I would start. There's checklists out there that any of the brokers can send you a checklist and like, hey, these are best steps. These are the ones that are costly. These are ones you can take now. Again, if someone needs that kind of checklist, they can email me, or like I said, go to your broker. They're going to have one.
That leads to a question I have. I mean, fleets are facing just exorbitant, insurance costs that they're not going down on their public liability policies. But looking at, hey, do I need to buy a whole nother policy? I mean, are these cyber policies affordable to smaller fleets? How are you guys structuring that?
Yeah, so they actually are, and it's kind of a misbelief there, misconception that cyber insurance is expensive, and it was there for a little bit. All these attacks, ransomware, phishing things were coming up, and the market didn't know how to respond because it was just a flood of them. We're now in 7 straight quarters of premiums going down and a ton of capacity in the market. Now there are some protocols, again, the MFA and some and an encryption stuff that they're going to want to see. Even with that being said, some of them will like extend a policy for a year while you get all the stuff you should have in place, and they just won't renew year 2 unless you did XYZ. I mean, I've placed cyber insurance for smaller fleets for as low as like 7,000-8,000 for the year, 10,000 for the year. So it's not terrible. Even on some of the larger fleets, if they take a deductible, you're not talking a whole lot. Even if you're not going to use, like a lot of people are like, oh, I'll just like take care of it if it's 5,000-10,000, whatever, it's not a big deal. What you need cyber insurance for is the post breach, right? It's to help you get up and running when it happens. It's
manage the fallout.
Yeah, the maintenance will follow is the forensic accounting, because you're going to be like, oh, my system's back up and running, but you're not going to know that now they have every personal information on every one of your drivers and staff.
Yeah,
because you think you're on, so you paid the $10,000, you're good to go.
Yeah. Sorry to cut you off. We are out of time, believe it or not. So, Justin, if maybe give your email address again, or where folks can find you if they have any questions or want to talk to you about these types of coverages, that type of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's justin.austin@aon.com. So JUSTIN AUSTIN @AON as in Nancy.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Guys, we're going to sign off here. Anything else that we missed?
Go Pacers.
Go Pacers.
Yeah.
This is our last chance.
Go Pacers.
All right. All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you guys later.